Multilinguals, what's your they didn't realize I could understand their language story? Inverse. A long time ago, my brother had a habit of making remarks about people in Spanish whenever he got annoyed, frustrated, or just wanted to make fun of someone, kinda like a gossiping schoolgirl. I told him it wasn't cool, not because he shouldn't be talking Spanish in public, but that he shouldn't be using it in such an underhanded way. If he had a grievance that he needed to get off his chest, he should tell them in a language they are likely to understand where we live, English. He kept doing it anyway. One time, we were leaving a major retailer and the store greeter asked to see his receipt before he could exit with the bagged merchandise in the cart. He had a hard time finding where he put his receipt, and he got frustrated. He switched to Spanish and said some variety of this old bitch, and the store greeter immediately called him out on it in Spanish. He was like a deer caught in the headlights. I was so happy she did it. He made a weak attempt at reasserting his right to be frustrated at the situation, but you could see he was very embarrassed at having been caught talking trash in Spanish. I love my brother, but I'm glad he stopped doing that soon after. A friend of mine can understand Korean. He was on an airplane and heard two women behind him talking about how fat he was in Korean. Still makes me sad to think about. Edit. Just to clarify, when I say talking about how fat he is, I should have clarified that they were making fun of him. That's honestly just the way I word things. Sorry for the confusion. It wasn't coming from a place of concern. They were coming from a malicious place. Edit 2. Also, my friend and I are enjoying the responses to this, and he wants you all to know he's lost a bit of weight since then, but he's still a big guy. He plans on losing more weight this year. I'm Romanian and an architect, and in Western Europe a lot of construction workers come from Romania. So a few colleagues of mine invited me to this party on a construction site. In Germany we have a celebration once the structure stands, the Richtfest, asking me to basically eavesdrop on the Romanians to find out how work went and if they were bitching about the architects or whatnot. Didn't hear anything negative from the Romanians all night, so as they were preparing to leave early, right after dinner, I bummed a cigarette off one of them in Romanian. They were thrilled. Finally someone could translate between them and the other workers and planners, and they were so proud of their work and so happy to be able to communicate with everyone. So we all, architects, clients, workers, engineers, got hella drunk, smoked a million cigarettes, and had the best time I've ever had on a construction site. My colleagues then reported that the work continued with a lot of new motivation the following day and good times were had by all. Edit. I'm also a chick, so there's an extra layer of positivity to this, as it can be really tough as a woman in the construction industry. Those guys made us all proud. Edit. Be excellent to each other and treat the people whose labor builds our world with respect. 3. My family is Italian. I don't speak the language, but have a pretty good understanding after listening to my dad and nonna over the years. We went to Italy to visit family, and my great aunt was talking about how she was so happy to meet us, and she asked her son if we could understand her, and when I said yes she broke into a huge smile and gave me a hug. It was so sweet. My neighbors went on holiday with her sister's family in Spain. The sister can speak fluent Spanish. They're Irish. Apparently a tour guide in Spain started talking about them, referring to them as those English sluts. They were never ones to let anything slide, so an argument broke out very quickly. Native English speaker studying Japanese here. Before I moved to Japan, I used to work at my hometown's international supermarket. The Japanese customers that I noticed, anyways, were usually very nice, and one time there was a younger woman who brought in, presumably, her child, and the child said she was hungry and wanted ramune candy. I didn't want them to feel like I was eavesdropping, so after I rang them up I motioned to some ramune candies we had on sale that day, which I had placed on my register. Tried to make it seem nonchalant, and the woman decided to chip in and get some. And hey, the kid was happy, so I was happy too. I lived in Riga for a short while and went out almost every Friday to meet girls. Riga has a lot of visitors from UK, and I've spent a chunk of my time in US, so I generally speak English in the center. I feel more comfortable using it. However, I also speak Russian perfectly well. So I'm drinking a beer in a bar, and all of a sudden some cute Russian girl comes up to me and starts speaking English to me. She invited me for a beer with her and her friend. I didn't really have anything else going for me that night, so I agreed. What followed is an hour of them trying to make me buy them a Dom Perignon bottle and some really dirty talking about what one of them would do to me if I agreed. They also talked to the bartender, who knows me fairly well, how they are gonna rip me off big time, and that I'm a foreign idiot. I ended up buying them 4 beers total out of decency. It was a lot of fun for a while, I'll give them that. Eventually I got really tired of it all, plus my friend hit me up, so I just switched to Russian, thanked them for a nice evening and left. Their faces were red from embarrassment and anger. Oh well. Don't scam people. I'm Greek, but study in Belgium. Greeks are notorious for talking about people loudly when abroad. The language is rare enough that most people, including myself, usually feel comfortable doing that. Only problem with that logic is, there are so many of us around the world, it's generally not a good idea. So I get on the tram one day, and there's this woman, 30s, sitting across from me, who says to her friend very loudly and in Greek, "What is that supposed to be, a boy or a girl?" Context for non-Greeks: we have a third, neutral gender that we use for objects, animals, or when talking about someone in a very rude and derogatory way. That is what she used, and in a very mocking tone as well. So I very calmly validated my ticket, and as I was walking away I reply, also in Greek, "It's a girl, and it speaks Greek as well." Her face was hilarious. She just made a mortified "ah" sound, and didn't utter another word until she got off a few stops later. I love this story, but it kind of terrifies me as well. I avoid talking about other people, but I do tend to have very personal conversations with my Greek friends in public places, confident that nobody understands, even after being myself proof that it's not very safe. Well, my great aunt told a story of how she once went into a butcher shop. When she walked in, the butcher was talking with a customer in Russian, which she spoke. The butcher saw my great aunt walk in and told the costumer, in Russian, that he'd take care of this old hag and then continue the conversation. So my great aunt, in English, asked for pounds and pounds of cold cuts, all sliced and wrapped. When it was all ready, she told him, in Russian, to shove it up your ass, and walked out. God, I love that woman. I am a Polish-speaking Mongolian, currently residing in London. Once I was in Kew Gardens enjoying a cuppa next to this lovely Polish couple, obviously tourists planning their route through the garden. After a while I noticed the guy left his hoodie behind, so I tracked them down to one of the places they were discussing earlier and casually handed him his hoodie back, with "I think this is yours," in fluent Polish. He was utterly flummoxed, and just stood there with his mouth wide open for a minute or two. Forgot to thank me even. I love their expressions when that happens. My former in-laws speak Italian. I went into the marriage not knowing Italian, but I picked it up pretty well. My mother had a bad habit of talking to her family in Italian, while I was sitting right there. Every one of them spoke English, so it wasn't as if she had to speak it to be understood. I put up with it, and it became interesting to hear what she had to say about me to the family while I was there. I got out of the marriage due mostly to her son's treatment of me, but her actions didn't help. So one day she calls me. She is going on about me being a terrible wife and mother. So first remark, I actually understand Italian. I understood everything you said about me when you thought I didn't know. She went quiet and cut the call short. It was wonderful. I'm Irish and I'm studying in Spain at the moment. I was in a restaurant the other day with my friend and there was a group of 3 or 4 English guys beside us. My friend and I were speaking in French, so they must have assumed we were French, or didn't understand English. They started shouting about how sexy my friend and I were, and how I have better tits, and she has a better ass. I think they were deliberately using a lot of slang in the hopes that, even if we did speak English, we wouldn't know English slang. I do, because I have an English housemate. My friend doesn't speak much English, but I told her what they were saying, and started loudly talking, in English, about how there are a lot of English speakers in this city and people should watch what they are saying, because they never know who can understand them. They went completely silent and beetroot red. Fucking idiots. Why they would assume that nobody in this city can speak English is beyond me. It's a university town with a high international population. African American English speaker here. Married a Chinese woman who speaks Cantonese and Mandarin. However, we took a trip to Japan on our honeymoon. I speak fluent Japanese. She speaks none. Went to a restaurant in Roppongi. The waitress approached us and began her evening script of the menu, specials, drinks, etc. However, she was speaking directly to my wife. I guess thinking that, since my wife was Asian, and I was not, that she spoke the language. My wife was hella confused. When the waitress finished her speech with "What can I start you with today?" my wife had no reply. The waitress began to look confused and ashamed, as if she had done something wrong. It wasn't until I chimed in with my wife as Chinese, "But I'd like to know what's on your wine menu tonight, please," that everyone had a good laugh. Though both of them still had a confused/cautious look on their faces.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to be entered into our iMac giveaway.